Experimentation's everywhere today, but few organizations have actually deployed it successfully. So how do we identify these use cases? How do we look at the real world problems? How do we overcome them? So if I start with you, Ed.
Yes, so I think one of the challenges, in fact, if I would look at the top 3 challenges for AI adoption, the first one would be that we're all human, which means we get very excited about new technology, which means that naturally we look for the most complicated, most sophisticated, top tier 1 business process, which is both revenue generating and customer focused. And that's the first challenge, is that it's too big. It's too much of an organizational change. I think we were saying this earlier around inside your presentation around operational change, is that because it is so big, because it is so complex, because it affects so many different teams and different business processes, departments and people, organizations struggle to operationalize it. So it gets stuck in this kind of POC stage where people are still trying to experiment with it. I think the second part is that, and I think Alex and yourself, you'll probably be able to chip in here, is that a lot of organizations, because no one really knows the full capability of AI, because they're still experimenting it, what they're not doing is taking a step back and understanding about their strategy. What do they actually want to achieve? How are they going to achieve it? What KPIs can they attach to it? What's their return on investment look like? All these things that you should define before you start a project. Everyone's getting very excited, wants to experiment, jumps into it without really understanding what they want to achieve. And everyone goes, oh, it didn't work. You're like, well, we didn't say what would work and what didn't work. We didn't really define our success criteria. And that's where it kind of gets stuck. And I think the third, and I will stop talking, but the third challenge is you've got 5 key data metrics which AI depends on, which is data quality, data quantity, data lineage, data centralization, which is all wrapped under like a data governance kind of area. And although I agree that AI programs do depend on these 5 metrics, the reality of it has always been a massive challenge to organizations. And I think there will always continue to be a big challenge to organizations. So getting back to the point, which is how do you identify AI use cases? And I think you'll probably hear this again and again throughout the evening, which is don't attack the biggest, most complex things. Identify smaller wins, a bit like what you were saying earlier, Joe, which is identify, even if it's not an end-to-end process, it's a part of a process that you can introduce technology, drive return on investment on it, prove that it works. Production, this is the big key thing, is productionizing it. It's no good having 25 POCs and nothing gets to production, but if you productionize it, it injects confidence, and then you can just repeat that again and again and again. So I think if you took the DevOps principles, which is start fast, start small, start fast, fail often, and repeat. If you take the exact same principles with AI, I think you'll do quite well.
I'm going to segue, and I'm hoping this is working. Segue. Oh, still, I know, but that's better. I'm going to segue into the value and just pick up on a couple of Ed's points. And I will use a case talking to a very large global pharmaceutical before Christmas. Fortunately, I sort of kept away from it. But again, it's that paralysis by pilot. And whilst this organisation is shouting from the rooftops about how great they're making the world with AI, and there is a massive amount of hype out there, essentially they're in exactly the same position as everybody else. And it was a case of the value case didn't stack up. Some of the pilots weren't succeeding and not actually doing what they thought it was going to do. But more importantly, because they'd actually brought it out, and I do see this a couple of times, and there's a couple of big banks that publicise this as well, they're bringing the AI out of technology sort of grip and actually delivering it from a business perspective. And this particular client actually sort of turned around and said, it's actually tech holding us up now. It's the security, it's the governance, it's the pieces, and actually they're not able to deliver at pace, so we can't actually get going with it because we're still stuck in this paralysis.
Yeah, and I think if you go in with a wide brick like you have and you try and get through it, you're going to get stuck in treacle. But if you go in like a pin, it's a very small use case. Operationally, you're going to get that through all these different layers of bureaucracy. And I think that's where you're going to win.
David,
is this working or not?
Press the button.
I did.
Is this working?
Is it working? No, not working.
Hey, mine, that was working now.
I think the first piece, and we're going to maybe talk about later, is articulate. Can you actually describe what you want? And I think, like anything else, if you can't, what's the point? When I started the AI initiative at the one insurtech that we were at, we had the top down come in saying we have to use AI. It came down from the private equity that bought us out. They didn't know what they wanted. There was a bit of FOMO in the market. They're worried about all the other private equities trying to IPO first, because they all said they were doing AI, but none of them could articulate exactly what they wanted to use AI for in the first place. So that was even before even deciding on a use case. They didn't actually know how to describe it.
Just a question on data you picked up on. Can everyone hear me? Bollocks to that. Sorry. So
Let's go on this one.
who's actually ever seen a perfect data set? Anyone seen a perfect data set or a 90%, 80% data set? No? Thoughts? How do we navigate a world where we need data for AI and data is imperfect in an imperfect world?
Yeah. Do you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, this is what we do, right? And the stats are that 50% of organizations only know where 10% of the data is, which is a scary fact. And so the idea is that whole discovery piece becomes a bit of a blocker in itself. And it's not so much about like what even the data is, it's actually the context. Like, what do you need data in context for? Because that's where AI becomes really powerful. You can pass fields of data in, but without the context that you actually need to build around it, it's a bit of a losing battle.
It's such a big problem that organizations are never going to get a budget signed off to fix data governance, because it's too big. It would be too slow, it would be too cumbersome, and it'd be too expensive. So I think the best thing to do is, a bit like we were saying earlier, is identify a process, map it end to end, look at the applications and systems and taxonomy that business process utilizes, identify the data that it depends on, and fix it there. And then productionize it and repeat it. So you're taking bite-sized chunks again and again and again, rather than trying to tackle the whole thing in one go.
And I think that bias is right for the next piece of work, the next project, the next success breeds success. Alex, your view. And a microphone back.
Thank you very much. Broken it. No, it's better. Now,
isn't it great? Us technologists not able to use a microphone. Maybe we should AI it. Actually work now. No, it's off. Apparently. They've got that.
does that work? It does.
Yeah.
Feels like a relaxed lounge evening, doesn't it? I just get comfy. Yeah, I guess when we come back to the value chain and we talk about business cases, you know, it is that board level down, and certainly I'm working for a PE client at the moment, so know the crazy metrics and the crazy push. It's unlike any other sort of industry. So again, it's those mandates coming down from board that go through annual reports about how great we're going to leverage AI, how it's going to revolutionize and obviously sell more shares and we'll make more money and everybody's happy. But again, it's how that gets down through long-range business planning, how that gets into 3-year plans, how that gets into tech plans, and then ultimately at the sharp end, how that gets delivered. And again, both myself and Joe come from the same stable, unfortunately, of the school of hard knocks for business cases. So again, forensic level tangible saves are really hard to derive and sort of identify first up. It's almost like an art form. But again, you know, we talk a lot about non-tangible cost saves, time saves, you know, we're going to be more productive. But again, it's really, really hard to measure this. So when we're sort of talking to enterprise clients, we do get pushed, certainly with PE clients, where is the cap save? And unfortunately, some of the pieces, and Joe, you'll reflect on the conversation we had over Christmas about, do we go and do cost, staff take out business cases? The answer was unfortunately yes. So unfortunately we're turning into a bit of hatchet people, but it is coming. There's a little bit of that flowing through now with the example I gave earlier. But again, we are still years away, maybe 10 years, 15 years away from it being fundamental change in the labour market, particularly for what I would imagine the majority of us do around the room.
I think it's a really interesting point, though.
Yeah.
Is it working? No? Well,
try that one.
Testing. Yeah, a little bit. So when there's two really things. So when you're automating processes, you're basically giving time back to the organisation, ultimately, aren't you? You're giving back productivity hours, but it's ultimately up to the organisation how they choose to spend those hours. Are they going to they've got two levers, really. Are they going to reinvest in their people as a people investment strategy and train them how to utilize these tool chains and people and process, etc., or are they going to try and cut cost? And I think that's at the moment, for me, that's the fear. It's not, is AI going to replace them? Is leadership going to allow them to do so? Because they've only got two levers to pull, and it's up to them which one they want to pull.
Can I pick up on a point to the closure for you, David? Is this working? Fantastic. So leadership's a great point. In this world where technology and business is actually blurring, what do we think future leaders will need in terms of skill and experience to drive this change? What do you think that we need to change into or morph into as we move forward?
Yeah, sorry.
How to use Claude's bot.
Yeah, it's now Maltbot. It's been rebranded the fifth time, whatever it is. Yeah. I think literacy, you actually mentioned earlier that people use the word AI too fluidly, but the idea is to actually understand what type of AI you need and what does it actually mean to the business. I think that's still a big gap in just knowledge. And I think the other point that I mentioned earlier is that, like, it's actually an old problem, is that can you articulate what you want? And it's not even just leadership, it's anyone that's trying to do anything in terms of output, that the more vague you are, it just turns out that AI is very good at scaling that vagueness. So I think the ability to articulate is a big one. I think a lot of organizations still treat technology more as a function within the business, but actually technology, not in terms of the common sense of IT teams, but treating AI as the emerging power that's actually going to unlock a company as a technology company. That's always been coming with cloud. It's been coming with multiple types of technologies over the few years, but now it's at that point where if you don't embrace it, you will be left behind. So you have to embrace that mindset. And I think it is discernment. I think that's the last one. I mean, you spoke about empathy. You took a lot of my answers earlier, so thanks for that. But I think discernment is a big one. And I was actually talking earlier after your presentation about the flow, is that when you use LLMs, they're non-deterministic. You can ask the same question 3 or 4 times, exactly the same model, same data, and you always get different answers. And so what is your level of accuracy that you're actually willing to deal with? So instead of being a business that says that we always have to have the exact answers, what is the actual, accuracy that you're actually happy to be at? Is it 90%? Is it 85%? And then really lean into the fact that it could fail, and then look at those unhappy parts and how do you embrace those? So that's something I've learned from the last couple of years from the leadership teams I'm talking to.
Alex, thoughts?
So really deep. It's a really good point, because again, just picking on one of Joe's points earlier around governance and secure by design and layering these in early. Again, there's a lot of regulation that is out there floating around that potentially a lot of people don't know about. So show of hands, does anybody know what Traeger is? No. So it's the laws around AI that Texas brought in that are very similar to UAI Act that went live 1st of Jan this year. And likewise with some of the fines that are coming later that are even more stricter than GDPR, we've got lots of sets of rules globally around what we can do, what we can't do, what we govern, what we can actually let it have access to, what it does. And again, sort of managing that risk and understanding that risk, what are we going to let it do? And understanding that is get it out early, understand it early, and make it an enabler rather than something as an afterthought. And almost most of us around the room have always heard the security says, no, we've all been there. Let's not make that happen again. So it's getting in early with some of this sort of process work. Sounds terribly boring, but it can be an enabler and it can help us unlock what are we doing, how are we doing it, more importantly, how are we doing it safely.
Yeah.
And I know he's not here at the moment, but ethically as well, which is a big concern. Ed?
Well, I suppose going off there, around the different attack services from a security perspective is probably a good one to take up on. So if I was going to kind of break that down, the attack vulnerability surface has changed, but I think it's really, and I'm going to ask the audience actually, it's really just prompt injection that's a big change for me, which is the surface attack. But we already have the SQL injection attacks, for instance, right? And you're right, is that it's about that defense in depth. But the other part of governance is that we need to understand where our data is being processed from, because that is now extending the landscape of security from a centralized data center to a decentralized data processing layer. And when we enable things like Copilot, it is great because obviously you're in your boundary of control from an identity perspective, but you just got to be careful about which region you're selecting. Because if you're not careful, you might end up in the East US, for instance, which is the standard region, and your data is actually moving outside of your geopolitical zone and into somebody else's geopolitical zone. So there's like data location, data processing, and then attack surface vulnerabilities as well, which is a change as well. But I suppose the other thing I was going to say, and it just made me laugh, is when we talk around the board members and what they do want to do and what their vision and how they use AI, the first thing they should do is automate board reports. I mean, how many hours do they spend a week, a month, a quarter, and annually creating these board reports, which is basically just resurface up data that sits in different locations with a bit of text?
So I'm feeling that pain with the PE board at the moment, and a business partner that doesn't know how to push slides. So Gamma has saved me so many hours, but you're absolutely right. Automate the small bits that make a difference. And again, it's a really good use case for a board level executive to make their life simpler, make it easier.
Yeah, and it's because really it's about when you're building out a business case for AI, it's understanding how many hours are elapsed performing this task for one person. How many people are doing the same task, like creating board reports, for instance, and then what are the level of people that are performing those activities? Because execs are the people that should be focusing their attention on driving business growth. And what they're actually doing is creating board reports and utilising their time on largely irrelevant tasks. And it's like, so that is, I don't know, say that's £100 per hour, for instance, for an exec. You times that by how many hours they're doing it, by how many execs across the entire organisation, geopolitically, that are performing the exercise. You go, right, well, that business case washes its face in about 8.7 seconds. So, yeah. You know, and it's finding those use cases, isn't it? It's those boring stuff. I'll be honest, it's boring, but it's frustrating and it's repetitive. You know, back to what you were saying earlier, is people answering the same question over and over again. HR answered the same question over and over again. And HR chatbot is probably one of the simplest things you could ever deploy.
I do have one point that David made. Just you talked about non-deterministic and what kind of errors are we prepared to accept. So let me give you a use case. What kind of errors are you prepared to accept in payroll processing?
It's a typical one. Not many.
Not many.
I mean, I used to have a payments company, so to see a transaction go out twice, but it shouldn't have. It would be pretty painful, especially if it was a payout from an insurer. It's like $10,000. Like that's not a mistake that can happen.
And we all like to be paid, don't we?
Yeah.
So that would be actually something we'd have to look at. Anybody got any examples from the audience about leadership? Paul, you did quite a bit of advisory roles, and we were talking earlier. Where do you see the future of leadership in this new AI world? Where do you see the future of leadership in this new AI world?
Good question.
You want the microphone?
No, I think, from my perspective, I mean, ultimately, I guess it's a lot of it is controlled or dictated by the client that you're actually talking to, because each client is obviously different levels of maturity. So you can talk to some clients, and you know they're talking to you about we need to improve our business processes, but at the same time, you know, they're talking about, well, actually, can we use AI to do that? In a lot of cases, which is pretty routine. And then you've got other businesses at the other end of the spectrum are actually just talking about how do we eradicate all these outages that we've been having. So it's a very different conversation you're having with different businesses ultimately. But in my own experience, what I'm finding is that I guess you're having to make sure that you're having the right conversations at the right time. And if you don't know all the answers, you're bringing in people who actually do know the answers to a lot of those questions. Because that's the key thing, is in ultimately you're that point of contact in most cases. But we don't all know the answers, so it's really important to have the right people around you, in my experience.
It's a very good point. And in terms of governance then, I know, Alex, you've done a lot of work in governance, especially with large organisations where you've got multiple departments who all want to have a say, want to have a bit of a play with what the solution. How do you think we should navigate those rocky shoals?
Yeah, not the easiest question to answer, because I've got another example with a Japanese pharmaceutical company who again are regional, US, Europe, Japan, and again culturally they all want to do things differently. So again, different stages of maturity. States are a lot more gung-ho. They manage regionally as well, so there's no central sort of control. So it's difficult, and at the moment we're working on standardising the European, which is 30 different companies in Europe, standardising the AI governance. They're a big Copilot user. They do a lot of pharmaceutical trials as well, so they want to bring the AI piece into the pharmaceutical world, which is high risk, high impact, but ultimately high return as well. So it's sort of trying to democratise it and work with the Europeans and Japanese, and then it's almost like a hope and a prayer if we can bring the Americans along with it. Because again, when we start talking about regional laws, they don't think in the States they're regulated, but they've actually got some of the strictest laws per states, and it's a bit of a minefield at the moment. But again, I'm going at it step by step. It's not an easy task. David?
I think there's two stories. One, we always try to treat it as a culture because ultimately that's what you want, but it always fails most of the time. But one of our clients is a massive digital agency and a time and material build. And so while they would want to be compliant and follow data governance, it's not in their interest because it slows them down. So while they're trying to develop solutions very quickly for their clients, big clients, the idea is the longer they take, the less profit they make. And so now they're trying to find other ways to complete compliance more as a checkbox exercise, not actually, see it as a security governance, but rather as a way, how can I sell this to the clients? And you'll find a lot of startups do that as well. They'll use Vances and stuff to just get their SOC 2 compliance, but they don't live it and they don't breathe it. It is just purely for a sales perspective. So it is quite interesting to see whether you actually care about the data you have or if it's actually going to impede your ability to make profit.
I think with big organizations, that the challenge you've got is that they're stuck in this massive command and control structure where they all own their own budgets and all want to do something, especially when it's a global organization. The way I've seen it work best is basically a bit of peacocking, is a center of excellence. And then so each tower lead, whether it's North America, APAC or EMEA, builds out the center of excellence, invests in a small part, proves it, and just shows off to the rest of them. Because every single leader wants to show off. So they show off, they go, look what we're doing. We should adopt this way of working. And then it starts a bit of a competition off. And I've seen that being quite successful, especially in massive organizations.
Yeah, certainly the same experience. And going back to the checkbox exercise as well, it's really hard to do that with something that is so fluid.
Yeah.
And again, I've seen Vanta customers doing ISO 42001, then we get called in to actually sort out the mess. Oh, we thought we were... well, you haven't quite interpreted that the right way, or you haven't understood it. So again, the maturity of some of these rules and regulations isn't quite there either. So it's all a bit sort of legally grey and a bit fuzzy. So you have to interpret it a certain way. So again, with things like SOX or ISO 27001, well understood, well established, everybody knows. But with some of the newer ones, it's so difficult to sort of, as you say, just follow and just tick box, and then, hooray, we've done it.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you haven't quite, but it's going to end in a sorry tale of, unfortunately, potentially fines and.
Yeah.
But I think that is another really good use case for AI, though, isn't it? Is compliance regulation. I mean, if you look at big insurers, the amount of effort elapsed trying to adhere to JSOX compliance is massive. It is monumental. So just trying to look at there are some, and you're right, that are very grey, and it's more about people and practices and how do you prove that is quite difficult. But a lot of it is more black and white, and try automating that, or at least gathering and capturing and discovering it to build out a report would save massive, hundreds of thousands of hours a year.
It's a living, breathing organism rather than a checklist exercise.
Exactly.
The more you layer it into your delivery and the more you layer into how you do things, it becomes an enabler rather than, as you say, once a year checkbox blocker of, oh, panic, we've got to pass the audit this year.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that is happening more and more, even with the regulations. If you look at PCI DSS for payments, it is becoming more fluid. They're dropping the hard rules of what you have to do, because it's kind of like a security CISO or CISO that asks you to change your password every month. You're gonna find shortcuts in terms of how you manage your password. It just doesn't make sense. And then it is always a snapshot in time. Yeah, at the moment when it comes to governance, typically once a year there's an auditor that comes along, and then everyone does the checklist. There's a spreadsheet that gets sent around with lots of screenshots as to how you're doing security, and then that process starts again as soon as the auditor leaves, or maybe 6 months before you realize they're coming back.
then to automate it.
Yeah. Anyone from the audience have some experiences with governance? Do you want to share?
Question about governance.
Go for it.
And then asked. But you said about you do a lot of stuff on your governance space, right?
Yeah.
Does that include AI governance for suppliers using AI to provide you services? And also,
Yeah.
does it include, does it include, SaaS products that businesses buy, and now they're turning on AI features that you didn't necessarily agree to?
Yeah, a lot of the governance approach, particularly things like ISO 42001, is all risk-based. So it's the risk of supply chain, our suppliers doing this. What is that risk? It's almost a living, breathing entity. It's not a risk that we put in a static. It's keep having to reevaluate, keep having to look at it. And it's those good practices. Again, it's, on a rotational basis, we are spot checking against some suppliers to make sure that terms and conditions haven't changed, contractual stuff hasn't changed. And I know personally for when I'm delivering work now as well, some of the MSAs that we sign, a lot of them are very, very heavy in AI clauses as well. Are you doing this? Are you doing that? How do you manage your risk? What are you doing? So again, it passes that sort of risk down to you to make sure you're doing the right things as well. But you're absolutely right. There is risk out there, but it is a risk-based approach to governance at the moment, particularly around AI.
It's a great question because I've come across that myself. We've got a couple of suppliers and they go, got this new feature. I say, and how's it work? Well, we got rid of AI. Oh, what? So what's that? Good bit of that. Okay. And then you go, so where is it? Oh, it's in our US operation. So I can't have anything leaving the UK. So you have to ask these questions, and then where exactly is the data going? It's constant. So you've got that ISO 42001, but you have to keep asking these new features because now people want to go on the bandwagon. So now everything's AI.
Yeah, what's it?
And it's like, that's great. And I said to one supplier, you've just now introduced a 3-month delay. Well, why is that? Well, because I have to take this through additional AI governance. What value is it that you got from calling it AI? Because it's still doing reporting, it's still doing automation, it's doing pattern matching. Mm-hmm. You call it AI, I've now got to go through a whole new stack of governance to verify, and you're going to lose 3 months worth of revenue, and I'm going to lose 3 months worth of benefits.
What would have been the acceptable direction?
Of course, leave it alone at that point.
Yeah. I think suddenly grasses you up to legal and procurement and then because the software had gone through governance and procurement rules and had been security assessed already. So we work in the security rules environment. Yeah.
So there was nothing wrong. What they did was they called it AI, and then that spark set off another checklist that had to go through a whole new. And I said, but it's all the same product. Nothing is changing. Right. But they've called it AI. But you're quite right. But there was no hide.
But there's still nothing that they changed. So they had changed. They didn't change the names. They did.
But in my world, if anything changes functionally wise, then I have to go through that process again to assess it and make sure to go through. And we should be doing that anyway as good practice, right? Because especially in the world of SaaS, where the big players, every quarter you're going to get an upgrade, right? So what exactly are they doing? What is it that you're committing to, right? So that's a really it's only going to get not worse. It's only going to become more prevalent. So it's a great question. You've got to keep asking that question.
But that's really how it's changed the process layer. So, I mean, if we went through cloud, we used to have a network-centric security approach, and then it changed with ubiquitous access and different devices to a identity-based security boundary. But we're starting to see it again now, because you're right. If you get a big SaaS player, say you go, I don't know, ServiceNow, for instance, right? And you say, right, we're using ServiceNow, and it's a SaaS version. We don't host it on-prem, it's the SaaS version. And then they go, right, we've just added AI into it. Well, where's the LLM? Yeah, so it's just where is it?
What does it do?
Exactly. I mean, the other thing to say, just from a technical perspective, is a lot of these SaaS companies that, let's be honest, they are commercial off-the-shelf applications. They are monolithic code bases. And then they go, we've now got AI. I'm like, well, you haven't. You've got a little slither on the edge of it with a chatbot that's just talking to data. That is not well, I suppose it is AI, but it's not like you've built the entire model for the ground up with AI in mind, so it can be autonomous actions, etc. It can't do any of that. It's still if this, do that, if not, do this. If this, do that, if not, do this. So the logic windows are massive for it to do any kind of orchestration.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's just a bull bear of mine anyway. Get it out there.
Yeah. And then maybe a last thought about it is that, there's a difference between control by design or design controls.
I know.
versus actually having an existing control system that you're trying to retrofit. And typically around AI, that's where governance is very difficult because you're trying to retrofit it into an existing structure that you have already versus designing a new one specifically for it.
Yeah, agreed.
Thoughts? Yeah, I mean, there are actually some published out. I mean, I talked about ISO, that came out about 2 years ago. We've got NIST, RMF as well, Risk Management Framework. We've also got CSA, we've got some really good controls. So there are really good frameworks, guidance out there. But again, don't turn it into a checkbox exercise. It's understanding what to use when and where to blend them so you get the best coverage, and you've actually then covered, but yeah, it's using all of them in your armoury basically.
What a strong technical strategic alignment looks like in an AI program. We've talked about governance, talked about security, talked about leadership. What does that look like end to end? Is it possible to do something end to end?
Yes. It's
Next question.
yeah. No, it's what we call line of sight. It's being able to understand exactly strategically why we're doing this delivery. It doesn't just matter, it isn't just about AI, it is about any technical delivery, essentially. Understanding that board level directive, how that trickles down through our strategies, through our CIOs, CTOs, and down into delivery, down into our transformation programs. And it's being able to understand in layman's terms the value creation of why we're doing it. Essentially, not always easy to do. And again, I think around the room between all of us, we've probably seen a lot of failed projects, let alone AI projects that seem to be the flavour of pilot paralysis. But again, it's understanding the sort of mandates of why we're doing something strategically and where that aligns to. And, we used to do a great trick with the advisory piece of being able to lift an annual report, digest it, pick up the strategic piece, and then almost zoom down into delivery, and then you could reverse it back up in some of this sort of advisory stuff we did. So that almost kind of, that direct linkage and line of sight is really, really key. Not always easy to do, but again, it's that fundamental, why are we doing this? What is the use case? And to Eddie's point as well, keep it simple to start with, so we know what we're doing. We know what the value is. It's time saving, it's cost saving, it maybe staff takeout, couldn't comment.
I think you're right, and I think with all technology-driven initiatives, for me, and I'm sure it is for everyone else in the room, it comes down to senior stakeholder engagement. If you've got a senior stakeholder who's engaged, who's owning the delivery, and will move oceans and mountains to unblock things for you, and he has the budget or she has the budget, that project will succeed. But when you... Yeah, but what happens is that you get different tower leads, and it could be in the UK, it could be globally, and you'll get processes that are too big that are going across these levels of ownership and accountability. And then when you have these gaps and these breakouts and these handoffs, that's where it falls down, is that you need to get every single senior leader who is owning and accountable for that area of that monster process to be your stakeholder, and it will succeed. But I think it goes down to what you were saying earlier around organisation maturity, that the lower maturity, and I'd even say for high maturity to do this anyway, but start with micro processes and mini processes. But as you get more and more mature, and as your level of confidence increases, then go after the bigger things. Because at that point, it's an easy sell. When you've saved 275,000 productivity hours on paper, then organizations are more likely to sign off the next piece and the next piece and the next piece. Whereas if you go with this big monstrous thing and there's too many handoffs, too many people involved, that's where I feel it falls down.
Turning the credibility as you go.
Yeah, exactly that.
You do what you said you were going to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are we talking operationally or actually building AI into a product that you might have?
Building it to a product, let's go with that one then.
Yeah, so I think it's definitely doable because it's generally owned by the product team, so there's less stakeholders. But I think one of the problems I had is that we didn't include people in the journey when I was head of AI for this InsurTech, which I won't name. And it was a flop after 2 years because I didn't include legal in the first place. So while we had this fully functional product, eventually we were blocked because we needed client data and legal blocked it. because we first needed to go ask permission for the clients. And I thought there was too many assumptions along the way, and that was all going to be okay. So it wasn't that we didn't do it on purpose. I just think we just didn't know at the time as to who was meant to be part of that conversation.
Which is often a problem that is faced. Who do you involve? Where are the stakeholders? Who are the people that you know are on the map that you need to involve? And also, who are the people that you don't know that you need to involve? Who are the people who know where the bodies are buried, as it used to be called? I think
Our previous experience is, in terms of organizational size, is AI adoption things like these done something quicker, maybe more efficient in a small organization? We can do quite quickly and they're probably kind of push into that, or is it kind of being adopted more in a large organization? What's kind of driving the challenges?
So in this case, the change was actually before equity partner came in. They knew that the AI was going to be future, especially around actuarial services. It's all predictive models. I think what they wanted to do before I took over is that they thought, okay, we'll carve this out, almost like a little startup within the organization and move at speed to be able to do it, and then try to integrate it. But actually what really happened is because they did that, they left everyone out of the picture, and then there was resentment to even want to help. And so that was the first year of my battle in terms of reintegrating into the organization to make sure it was a journey held by everyone. And they were all under the same mission, same vision behind it. And then
You chose the first one because we find it's going to be easy.
well, I didn't choose the first one. I was handed. I mean,
chose that. They thought,
because logically it makes sense. You don't go through so many controls. There's less bureaucracy, and in a way, the product was developed very quickly. But to productionize it took way longer than it should have, because people weren't part of the journey in the first place. So if anything, I think the learning from that is get the right people involved from the beginning, make them feel like they're part of the journey, keep them up to date like they are the stakeholders, because ultimately they're going to be the ones that actually help you commercialize it.
Or they're going to be the ones who sign up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Other question is, so you're talking about people directly in the right place doing the right job. Which trust AI to select us? We are not. Yeah, please.
That's probably not. And I think it's mainly, there's a few things I look at. I always look at attitude and aptitude and then skill. And I think AI is very good at looking at skill first and not really recognizing attitude and aptitude. So I would probably help, get through CVs very quickly just to see what skills they have. But then ultimately I'll be looking at attitude and aptitude first. And AI is just not very good at doing that. It can read a paragraph of someone put in their CV and say, hey, this person's the best person in the world. But until you actually get in front of that person, you just don't know.
So just expanding on that one, because it's an interesting one, but we're getting past the point where AI is just text input. You could have a video call with AI, and AI could do that.
Yes.
How are you feeling? Your emotions? What's the face? Are you in a good mood, bad mood?
The rest.
I got offered a pitch for a piece of work for an American firm, and the first stage was, will you do a 45-minute AI interview? And I kind of passed on the opportunity. I kind of said, I can't really see the value. I don't know how that works, but getting interviewed by an AI construct to pitch for a piece of work, and it was sort of like, it didn't compute in my mind, so I passed on the opportunity. But there are tools out there and organisations using tools like that to obviously act as that first barrier to getting into a role or into a pitch or into a piece of work.
it's so sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a cycle here where that's a thing now, but in 3 years' time, people go, that was actually continuously never going to go back to like then. Or it's going to be normalised.
Yeah, or it's going to be normalised there.
What were their intakes?
Show of hands.
Should we ask Chris? Where is he?
Hiding in the backs.
I feel like it's going to go.
It took me by surprise. It was new to me, and I nearly did it just for the experience of what the hell is this? I love it.
Yeah. The thing is that if it was just for skills based, I don't know, say you're an engineer and you need to know, how to connect a VNet endpoint to something, right? Then an AI can ask that, right? But you're going beyond first stage, you're now in second stage, and this is about people. This is about, can you culturally operate inside of how we do things? It's a human interaction, and I think that's where it needs to stop. It's not human, and it shouldn't be trying to pretend that it's doing human activities, because people like us, want to talk to other people. Ultimately,
as technology gets.
This is like where my thought process is always, is that we think of it right now, in the present, but you've got to think in 10 years' time, in 15 years' time, in 20 years' time, like, you know, how much has changed in the last 5 years? Now, okay, now what happens in 10 years' time? So like there's this idea that, okay, right now we can't see that, and you know, humans should definitely interact with humans, but 5-6 years ago, ChatGPT didn't exist, and no one knew that was, and now look at what's happening every single day. So the idea that actually an AI interviewing someone seems ludicrous, but actually if you think of it from like the last 5 or 6 years, like actually it's probably not that crazy.
Well, so maybe there's a bit of
There's an entire generation of people who've grown up now in a world where they've always had internet, right? Which 30 years ago would have been was a was it Mosaic and dial up, and it was psychic. I do bird impressions as well. Different. But if you think about the way that's changed and how people expect it, and it's a good point. It might get normalised. It might be because I've got a 12-year-old daughter. She does AI, plays with AI at TikTok all the time, and it may be that she has no capacity talking to an AI.
Like if you think about even what I was just saying just now about even the cake price thing was a kind of it seems silly, right? But like that's now normal.
I think it's going to change.
Exactly.
I think like you, I think it's going to change very rapidly.
Yeah.
And the people that are coming through, sort of next. My son's 24. He doesn't want to interact with a lot of people. He wants to get as much done without people, and then go to people. So there is a generational change as well. So they're going to expect these agents and AI to do more for them. So I think that maybe we're a different generation as well. So we've got to start thinking, and it is changing rapidly. I don't think it's 10, 15 years. It's going to be
much faster. With the way it's evolving is much quicker. So it could be that they could do the first pass. We're already seeing lots of companies doing CV scanning and all that stuff.
But then it could be the first pass of the interview rather than you going online. And I think some companies are already doing it. You talk to a Zoom sort of thing, but rather than that, it could talk to you and pick out some nuances. If it's good enough to do that first pass, and then you go to human. I can see that happening. Before 12 months.
Yeah. Before we go on, just to say, because we're running out of time, this is always happens. We get to really good with the conversation, but I'm assured that there's more beer later. Is that that's okay. So let's carry on for the next couple of minutes, and we'll wrap it up with the final thoughts from everyone about positivity about AI. But sorry, you were going to say?
I had a question, but I was just going to say, you make a call to a insurance company, right? You have to go through an AI voice prompter. You can't speak to a real person unless you keep pressing 9. It's asking you for a date of birth and everything, but a real person comes on later and it's asking you exactly, we're going to take you through security. Google doesn't. My question. I get charged for asking. My question, just follow on to what you said about cost savings. How do we rein in the potential cost of AI models spiraling out of control? Is there going to be a new FinOps for AI created? It could get really, really expensive. You just find that you've blown all your
You've blown all your token spend.
You're right, and again, it goes back to selecting the right tool for what you're trying to achieve, and it is the right model for what you try. You don't need, the latest GPT model, the latest Gemini model to scan a document and do some data entry. Use 4.0 Mini, for instance. It's a third of the cost, if probably not even 20% of the cost of the big large language model, and it will do the work. So it's picking the right model to perform the right task, because there's a bazillion models out there. If you go into the Azure portal or into GCP, they've all got access to all the models. There's all the OpenAI models in there. There's all the Claude models in there. There's all Gemini models in there, and there's loads of them. There's like 120 models if you've recently had a look at them. And it's picking the right model to perform the right task, but then knowing what you wanted to achieve before you started.
You guys, would you certainly the cost saving bit cause AI to pay for it, though?
So I think if you saw system design, if you're just going to build something that's hyperscale, you'll typically look at the architecture first before anything else. So how would these things be built together? And I think what a lot of people do is they just chuck everything in an LLM in the same context window, and that's what just destroys it. Yeah. But in terms of really using LLMs, you would specifically design the architecture around the need of it. So you wouldn't need to put in all the data that you want, only the data that it needs. So it becomes more context data engineering, and that's where the savings will eventually come through, because that's typically where you would, have a human skill involved. Yeah. So people are so worried about developers dying off. I do think code is dying off. English is becoming the new language, but specifically around system architecture design, I think that's going to be the new principles that generally engineers do have.
Yeah,
and that's the transferable skill. That if you learn how to do that very well, then there is solves up.
Go on, Alex, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you're absolutely right. These very early days, I'm going to use the drug dealer analogy. It's like everything is cheap. I remember back in the day, Colin, when we were offered essentially Microsoft E5 on a 3-year deal at 99p a license. It's like about 25 quid, 30 quid a head now. So again, I think as it develops, a lot of stuff is very cheap at the moment. I was talking with a colleague around just governance layers and how you layer in AI governance for AI and the cost of it and how you meter that cost. And essentially for low risk systems, we wouldn't apply the same amount of horsepower to it, and we'd do a lot less compute power, so it'd be cheaper. But then the high risk stuff, we ramp it up. And then even on the high risk stuff, we have a lot more human oversight. So again, that cost goes up. But you're absolutely right. I think it's very early days. A lot of stuff is cheap. It will get more expensive, as we've seen with cloud. As consumption ramps up, the data gets in there, eats in and gets involved in a lot of our key systems. It will then, they've got to make their money back at some point. And, we saw the amount of money I think it was last couple of days, just being
loss.
Yeah, just been bandied around in something like 600 billion, I think, has been spent this year alone on just infrastructure upgrades. And somebody has to pay for that somewhere. And unfortunately, it'll probably be the majority of us at some point.
And on that point, I'm going to call it rather than score past night. Good night. Yeah. Look, it's been a great conversation. A round of applause for our panel, please.
And a round of applause for yourself with some great questions. Okay, great questions. So look, thanks for that.
It always happens, you get to the end and suddenly everyone's talking, which is great. Right? It's been some fantastic discussion points. I suggest now we help Chris spend the money on beer. Champagne. Let's continue the conversation over a beer. So thank you all very much. Okay?
That's well.
Go. Well done, everybody.